My name is Amanda Wilson, and I just turned 30. For weeks, my family kept whispering, "Just wait. Something big is coming for your birthday." Their excitement was contagious. We've always been close, so naturally, I believed them. I imagined parties, gifts, maybe even a surprise trip. But when I came home on my birthday to an empty house and saw that photo on my dining table, everything changed. I never expected what happened next. Before I dive into my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you've ever felt forgotten by the people who should remember you most, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories that might just help you feel less alone. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Turning 30 felt monumental. Not in a dreading way, but in a this is a significant milestone kind of way. My 20s had been a roller coaster of college graduation, first real job, first real heartbreak, and finally settling into a career that mostly paid the bills. Now I was approaching the big 3-0, and it felt like crossing an invisible threshold into proper adulthood. My family had always made birthdays special. My mother Eleanor would bake my favorite chocolate raspberry cake from scratch. My father Gary would write heartfelt cards that made me tear up without fail. My younger sister Natalie would organize games, and my older brother Michael would return from wherever his latest business trip had taken him. We were that family, the ones who celebrated properly. It started 3 weeks before my birthday. Mom called on a Sunday afternoon. "Amanda, sweetheart, we need to talk about your birthday," she said, her voice pitched higher than normal, the way it gets when she's excited about something. "Mom, please, nothing too extravagant," I replied automatically. Last year, they'd surprised me with a weekend at a local winery. It was lovely, but I didn't want them spending that kind of money again. "Oh, don't you worry about anything. Just keep the whole weekend open. Something big is coming." She practically sang the last part. The next hint came from Michael. He texted me out of the blue on a Tuesday. "Hey sis, got your birthday weekend free? Trust me, you'll want it clear. Something big in the works." I responded with a string of question marks, but he just sent back a zipped mouth emoji. Then Natalie called while I was grocery shopping. "Have you bought anything nice to wear yet?" she asked, skipping hello entirely. "For what?" I balanced my phone between my ear and shoulder while comparing 2 nearly identical boxes of pasta. "Your birthday celebration, duh. Mom says I'm not supposed to give details, but you'll want something special to wear. Something big is coming, Mandy. Only my family calls me Mandy, and only when they're feeling particularly affectionate." By this point, my curiosity was piqued to maximum levels. Even my boyfriend Richard was acting suspiciously. We'd been dating for 2 years, and while he was good at many things, keeping secrets wasn't one of them. Yet whenever I tried to extract information about my birthday plans, he'd become intensely interested in whatever was on television, or suddenly remember urgent emails he had to send. "Just trust the process," he'd say with a mischievous smile. "Your family wants this to be special." With everyone being so cryptic, my imagination ran wild. Maybe they'd rented a party boat on the lake. Or perhaps they'd arranged for my favorite author to do a signing at the local bookstore. My most extravagant theory involved a surprise trip to New York to see the Broadway show I'd been talking about for months. Family celebrations were our love language. When Natalie turned 21, we'd surprised her with a weekend in wine country. For Michael's 25th, we'd all pitched in for skydiving lessons because he'd always wanted to try. When Mom turned 50, Dad had secretly arranged for all her college friends to fly in for a reunion weekend. I remembered my 16th birthday when Dad had arranged a scavenger hunt across town, with clues leading to different meaningful locations from my childhood. My 21st had featured a surprise party with friends from every stage of my life, some I hadn't seen in years. For my 25th, they'd created a video montage with messages from relatives and friends who couldn't be there in person. These memories made me feel incredibly loved, despite the rough year I'd been having professionally. I'd been passed over for a promotion at the marketing firm where I worked, and one of my major clients had taken their business elsewhere. But my personal life was solid, with Richard talking increasingly about our future together and my family's unwavering support system. As the birthday countdown continued, I became a detective in my own home. I checked Richard's browser history when he left his laptop open. I eavesdropped shamelessly when my family members called him. I even checked our shared calendar for mysterious blocks of time. Nothing concrete surfaced, but the whispered conversations and knowing looks continued. The night before my birthday, I could barely sleep. Richard had gone to bed early, claiming a headache, but I suspected he needed to finalize birthday preparations. I lay awake, feeling like a child on Christmas Eve, imagining all the wonderful possibilities tomorrow might bring. Whatever this something big was, I felt immensely grateful to have people in my life who would go to such lengths to make me feel special. Little did I know how drastically everything would change in less than 24 hours. I woke up on my birthday to unusual silence. Normally, my phone would be buzzing with birthday messages, starting with my mother who prided herself on being the first to call every year, exactly at 7:06 a.m., the time I was born. But when I checked my phone at 7:15, there was nothing. No missed calls. No text messages. Not even any social media notifications. That's weird, I murmured to myself. Richard had already left for work, which wasn't completely unusual for a Thursday, but I'd expected at least a birthday kiss or card before he departed. On his pillow lay a hastily scribbled note. Early meeting. See you tonight. Happy birthday. No hearts, no X's and O's, just his initials. I tried not to feel disappointed. Clearly, whatever they had planned was for later. I dressed with extra care, choosing a new blouse I'd been saving for a special occasion, applied makeup more meticulously than usual, and even curled my hair. Whatever this surprise was, I wanted to look good for the photos that would inevitably end up on Instagram. At work, my colleagues sang an off-key rendition of Happy Birthday and presented me with a grocery store cake. My boss Bradley gave me a generic gift card with a pre-printed message. It was nice, but nothing extraordinary. Throughout the morning, I kept checking my phone, expecting instructions or at least more birthday wishes from my family. The silence was becoming increasingly uncomfortable. By lunchtime, anxiety had replaced my earlier excitement. I called my mother, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried my dad with the same result. Michael's phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail, and Natalie's phone was apparently turned off completely. I sent a group text. So, is something happening for my birthday, or? 20 minutes later, my mom responded. Sorry, sweetie, busy day. Talk later. Dad added. Happy birthday, princess. See you soon. Michael sent a birthday cake emoji and Natalie wrote, Happy birthday, sis. Big surprise coming later. These vague responses only heightened my confusion. What did later mean? After work? This evening? I considered asking directly, but didn't want to seem ungrateful or impatient. By 3 o'clock, I couldn't focus on work anymore. I told my supervisor, Catherine, I wasn't feeling well and headed home early. Surely whatever they had planned was being set up at my house. A surprise party seemed increasingly likely, especially with everyone being so evasive. I pulled into my driveway with butterflies in my stomach. The house looked ordinary from outside. No extra cars parked on the street. No balloons tied to the mailbox. Still, they could all be hiding inside with the lights off, waiting to jump out and yell, surprise, when I opened the door. I took a deep breath, turned my key in the lock, and pushed the door open. Hello. I called into the darkness. No response. No sudden flood of lights. No chorus of voices yelling surprise. Just the familiar silence of an empty house. I flipped on the lights and stood in my entryway, completely confused. The house was exactly as I'd left it that morning, nothing special or different anywhere. No decorations. No presents. No people waiting to celebrate with me. Bewildered, I walked through each room, finding nothing out of the ordinary until I reached the dining room. There, in the center of the table, was a photograph I hadn't seen before. I picked it up with trembling hands. It was a selfie of my entire family at an airport. Mom, Dad, Michael, and Natalie, all wearing sunglasses and summer clothes, grinning widely with luggage visible behind them. Beside the photo lay a handwritten note in my mother's distinctive cursive. Amanda, surprise. We're off to Hawaii for great Aunt Florence's emergency family reunion. She insisted on seeing everyone right away, and the only dates that worked were this week. "We're so sorry to miss your birthday, sweetie. We'll celebrate properly when we get back in 2 weeks. There's a little something for you in the fridge. Love you lots. Mom, Dad, Mike and Nat. Hugs and kisses." I stood frozen, reading and rereading the note. Great Aunt Florence's emergency family reunion? In Hawaii? During my birthday week? And they all went without even telling me until I found this note? With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram. The first post in my feed was from Natalie, posted 3 hours earlier. It showed my family on a beach, cocktails in hand, with the caption "Aloha Hawaii." Family time is the best time. #blessed #family vacation. Michael had posted too. Nothing better than surprising Great Aunt Florence with a visit. #family reunion #Hawaii. I sank into a dining chair, my mind struggling to process what was happening. They hadn't just forgotten my birthday, they had actively chosen to be thousands of miles away for it. And from the photos, they were having a wonderful time without me. I opened the refrigerator, finding a small grocery store cake with "Happy Birthday Amanda" written in generic icing and a gift bag containing a scented candle and a $50 gift card to a department store. The kind of gifts you buy at the last minute when you've put no thought into them. My phone rang finally. It was Richard. "Happy birthday, babe," he said, his voice oddly strained. "Sorry I left without saying goodbye this morning. Work has been crazy today." "Did you know?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Know what?" "That my family went to Hawaii without me. During my birthday week." A telling pause. "They mentioned something about a trip." I didn't know it was right now. His hesitation told me everything. He knew. He'd known all along. "I thought we were celebrating tonight," I said. "Everyone kept saying something big was coming." "Yeah, about that." Richard cleared his throat. "I have to work late tonight. Big client emergency. Maybe we can do something this weekend instead?" I ended the call shortly after, not trusting myself to speak without crying. The something big that had been coming wasn't a celebration for me at all. It was a family vacation I hadn't been invited to join. That night, I sat alone in my living room, eating takeout Chinese food straight from the container and staring at the untouched grocery store cake. 30 years old, and I was spending my birthday completely alone, scrolling through social media pictures of my family having the time of their lives in Hawaii. With each smiling photo and enthusiastic caption, the confusion and disappointment crystallized into something harder and colder inside my chest. The morning after my birthday, I woke up with swollen eyes and a hollow feeling in my chest. I'd fallen asleep on the couch, my phone still clutched in my hand. The first thing I saw when I unlocked it was another batch of Hawaii photos. Mom posing with a flower lei. Dad attempting to surf. Michael and Natalie making peace signs in front of a luau. The timestamp on one of Mom's posts caught my attention. It showed my family checking into their resort, dated 3 days ago. They had already been in Hawaii when they were sending me those cryptic "something big is coming" messages. They'd been lying to me for days. With a growing sense of unease, I started looking more closely at their social media. In the background of one photo, I spotted a confirmation email printed out on the hotel desk. Zooming in, I could just make out a booking date from 3 months ago. This trip hadn't been sudden at all. It had been planned for months. I called Richard again. "I need to know the truth," I said when he answered. "How long have you known about this Hawaii trip?" His side told me everything before he even spoke. "Since they booked it. Your mom swore me to secrecy. And you didn't think I deserved to know that my entire family was abandoning me on my birthday? That all those hints about something big were just cruel jokes." "They didn't mean it that way, Amanda. They genuinely forgot the dates overlapped with your birthday until it was too late to change the bookings. Your mom felt terrible about it. Terrible enough to call and tell me herself? To apologize properly instead of leaving a note? To maybe, I don't know, invite me along?" His silence was damning. As the conversation ended, a memory surfaced from my childhood. I was 11, and my piano recital had been scheduled the same evening as Michael's championship baseball game. My parents had split up, Mom coming to my recital for the first half before leaving to catch the end of Michael's game. Dad hadn't come at all. I remembered the hollow feeling of playing my solo piece to a half-empty auditorium, watching my mother slip out the back door just as I reached the difficult passage I'd practiced for weeks. It hadn't been an isolated incident. When I made honor roll, the achievement was overshadowed by Natalie breaking her arm the same day. My college graduation had been rushed because Michael had a job interview the next morning in another state, and we needed to get on the road. My first art exhibition opening had been sparsely attended because it conflicted with a distant cousin's wedding shower. Sitting in my living room surrounded by yesterday's takeout containers, I realized this was just the latest in a lifelong pattern. I was always the one whose achievements and milestones could be postponed, rescheduled, or overlooked entirely. I tried calling Mom, but she answered breathlessly, clearly in the middle of some activity. "Oh, hi, sweetie, can I call you back? We're just about to go snorkeling." "Mom, I got your note," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Great. Did you like the cake?" "I told your father it was too small, but it was all they had left at the store." "Mom, you're in Hawaii during my 30th birthday." "I know, sweetie, and we feel just awful about it. But Florence insisted it had to be this week, something about the resort having availability. We'll make it up to you when we get back, I promise." In the background, I could hear Dad calling for her to hurry up. "I've got to go, Amanda. We'll talk properly later, okay? Love you." And she was gone. I pulled up Great Aunt Florence's Facebook page. Her most recent post showed her beaming in the middle of our family group with a caption, "Thank you to my wonderful family for this amazing surprise visit. Best birthday gift ever. #blessed, #family, #Hawaii." So it wasn't even an emergency reunion. It was a surprise birthday trip for Great Aunt Florence, who had turned 75 2 days after my 30th birthday. They had chosen to celebrate her birthday instead of mine. With shaking hands, I opened my email and searched for any messages from my family about birthday plans. There were none, but I did find an Amazon order confirmation forwarded from my mother's account to mine by mistake. It showed my birthday gifts, the scented candle and gift card, had been ordered through Amazon's birthday reminder feature with standard shipping. They hadn't even personally selected my gifts. They'd let an automated reminder do it for them. I sank onto my kitchen floor, phone clutched to my chest, and finally, let the tears come properly. This wasn't just about a missed birthday. This was about being invisible in my own family. It was about being the reliable one, the one who never caused trouble, the one who could be counted on to understand when other things took priority. Always. Later that evening, I called my friend Jessica, the only person who'd actually remembered my birthday without a social media reminder. "I feel like I'm going crazy," I told her after explaining the situation. "Am I overreacting? Should I just be understanding about this like always?" "Amanda," Jessica's voice was gentle but firm, "you're allowed to be hurt. This was your 30th birthday, and they ditched you for a beach vacation. That's not okay. But they're my family. They love me. Love should include consideration and respect. They didn't give you either in this situation." We talked for over an hour, with Jessica validating feelings I'd been trying to suppress. By the time we hung up, I felt marginally better, but the hurt had settled deep in my bones. That night, I cried myself to sleep again, clutching my phone with its endless stream of Hawaiian vacation photos, feeling more betrayed than I ever had in my life. The people I trusted most had made me feel completely irrelevant, and I wasn't sure our relationship would ever be the same again. 3 days after my birthday, something shifted inside me. I woke up with a different energy. The hurt was still there, but it had crystallized into something sharper, more defined. I was angry. Genuinely, thoroughly angry. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and began mentally cataloging all the times I'd been overlooked, all the sacrifices I'd made that had gone unappreciated. The list was distressingly long. I had postponed starting graduate school for a year when Mom needed surgery, staying home to take care of her during recovery. Michael hadn't even come home from college to visit, claiming his classes were too important to miss. I'd loaned Michael $5,000 when he was between jobs 3 years ago, money he had yet to pay back in full. When I mentioned it once, he'd acted like I was being petty for bringing it up. I'd spent countless hours helping Natalie study for her nursing exams, putting my own work aside to make sure she passed. She'd never once offered to help me with anything requiring similar time commitment. I'd changed my vacation plans last Christmas to accommodate my parents' last-minute decision to cruise instead of hosting at home. No one had thanked me for the non-refundable deposits I'd lost. The more I remembered, the angrier I became. I had spent my entire life being the supportive daughter, the helpful sister, the understanding girlfriend. And what had it gotten me? An empty house on my 30th birthday and a family who couldn't even be bothered to call. My phone rang. It was Richard. Hey, I was thinking maybe I could come over tonight. Bring some dinner, celebrate your birthday properly. 3 days late, I said flatly. Amanda, come on. I've apologized for working late on your actual birthday. What more do you want? I want you to acknowledge that you knew my family was planning to be away, and you said nothing. You let me get excited about something big that was never coming. Your mom asked me not to say anything. What was I supposed to do? Maybe consider my feelings for once? Maybe realize that letting me believe my family was planning something special when they were actually planning to abandon me was cruel? Abandon you? That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? They're on a family trip, not moving to Mars. A family trip without a family member. During that family member's milestone birthday. Look, I know you're upset, but they're your family. They love you. They just made a mistake with the timing. I felt my temper rising. A mistake? They booked tickets 3 months ago. They've been planning this for months, Richard. This wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. What exactly are you saying here, Amanda? I'm saying that I'm tired of being the only one who considers other people's feelings. I'm saying that if you can't understand why this hurts so much, then maybe you don't understand me at all. Are you giving me an ultimatum right now? Over a birthday? No. I'm asking you to see this situation clearly. My family chose to celebrate Great Aunt Florence's birthday instead of mine. They lied about it being an emergency reunion. They let me believe they were planning something special for me when they knew they wouldn't even be here. And you knew all along and said nothing. So, what do you want me to do? Tell your family they're terrible people? Stop talking to them. I want you to stop defending their behavior and start acknowledging my feelings. The argument escalated until Richard finally said he needed space to think and hung up. I stood in my kitchen, shaking with anger, and then did something completely out of character. I screamed. A loud, primal scream that probably alarmed my neighbors. It felt incredible. Fueled by rage and adrenaline, I tore through my apartment cleaning like a hurricane. I scrubbed floors, organized closets, and rearranged furniture, physical actions to match the emotional upheaval I was experiencing. By evening, my apartment was spotless, and I had worked through some of the initial fury. Sitting at my computer, I opened Facebook and systematically went through untagging myself from family vacation photos where I had been included in previous years. I temporarily muted my family members' accounts, unable to stomach more pictures of their Hawaiian paradise. The next day at work, I confided in my coworker Stephanie during lunch break. My sister did something similar, she told me. Scheduled her wedding the weekend of my college graduation, then acted like I was being selfish for being upset about it. What did you do? I asked. I stopped making myself available for every family emergency. Started saying no when I needed to. It was hard at first, but eventually they got the message that I wasn't the family doormat anymore. That afternoon, I drafted a scathing email to my family, detailing every overlooked birthday, every sacrificed opportunity, every thankless favor I'd performed over the years. I wrote about how it felt to realize I was the only one who ever considered other people's feelings. I described the humiliation of sitting alone in an empty house on my birthday, watching them celebrate without me on social media. I didn't send it. Not yet. But writing it was cathartic, bringing clarity to feelings I'd been suppressing for years. That evening, I realized something important. I had always been the responsible one, the The family member who never caused trouble, who could always be counted on to understand when plans changed or promises were broken. I was predictable, reliable Amanda who would never make a scene or demand attention. And I was done with it. Completely done. I texted Jessica. I've made a decision. When they get back from Hawaii, things are going to change. I'm done being the family doormat. Her response was immediate. About time. Want me to help you practice setting boundaries? For the first time in days, I smiled. The anger was still there, but it had transformed into something productive. Determination. I was determined to make significant changes in how I allowed myself to be treated, not just by my family, but by everyone in my life. Starting now. After the initial wave of anger subsided, I found myself able to think more clearly. I needed to understand how we had gotten here. Not to excuse their behavior, but to get perspective on the family dynamics that had allowed this situation to develop. I began by reviewing past family interactions with new eyes. Patterns emerged that I had been blind to before. When there was tension, I was always the mediator. When plans fell through, I was the one who adjusted. When someone needed help, I was the first to offer it, often at my own expense. I remembered family therapy sessions after my parents briefly separated when I was 14. The therapist had noted that I was the emotional caretaker of the family, a role no child should have to play. At the time, I had taken it as a compliment. Now I recognized it as a warning. I decided to call my cousin Rachel, who hadn't gone to Hawaii. Rachel was my mother's sister's daughter, and we had always been close, though we didn't see each other often since she moved to Seattle. I was wondering why you weren't in any of the Hawaii photos, she said when I brought up the trip. Because I wasn't invited, I replied. They went during my birthday week and didn't tell me until I came home to an empty house on my actual birthday. There was a long pause.
Wow.
That's really messed up, Amanda. I know. I'm trying to understand how this happened. Has Aunt Judith said anything about why I wasn't included? Rachel hesitated. This is awkward, but from what Mom said, your parents didn't want to worry you because your mom has been having some health issues. Nothing life-threatening, she added quickly. But she's been having these dizzy spells, and they didn't want to ruin your birthday with medical concerns. This was the first I'd heard about any health issues. What kind of dizzy spells? Has she seen a doctor?
She's had some tests.
I don't know the details. But apparently that's part of why they wanted to do this trip now, while she's still feeling up to traveling. I felt my anger deflate slightly, replaced by concern. Why hadn't Mom told me about her health problems? There's more, Rachel continued reluctantly. Michael lost his job about 3 months ago. He's been putting on a brave face on social media, but he's actually been struggling. And Natalie and Mark have been in marriage counseling. They nearly separated last month. Each revelation hit me like a physical blow. My family was falling apart and no one had told me anything. Why am I just hearing about this now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Amanda, you're the strong one. The one who has everything together. They probably didn't want to burden you with their problems. But they're fine burdening me with being excluded from a family vacation? With being alone on my birthday? Rachel sighed. I'm not defending them. What they did was wrong. I'm just trying to help you understand. Your family has this image of you as someone who doesn't need support, who's always okay. It's not fair, but it's how they see you. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence, processing this new information.
My mother was sick.
My brother was unemployed. My sister's marriage was in crisis. And no one had told me because they saw me as the strong one. The irony was painful. They had excluded me to protect me, but in doing so, had hurt me more deeply than any bad news could have. And they had denied me the opportunity to support them through their struggles, which was all I had ever wanted to do. Later that evening, Richard called. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. I've been thinking about our conversation, and you're right. I should have told you what your family was planning. It wasn't fair to let you get your hopes up. Thank you for saying that, I replied, my voice steady. But there's more going on here than just the birthday thing. I told him what Rachel had shared about my family's various crises. Wow, he said when I finished. That explains some things. Your mom did mention being worried about some medical tests when she asked me not to tell you about the trip. I assumed it was minor. Why does everyone in my life think I'm too fragile to handle difficult information? Do I come across as that unstable? No, that's not it at all. If anything, it's the opposite. You seem so capable, so put together. I think they worry that they lean on you too much already. So instead they exclude me completely? How does that make sense? It doesn't, Richard admitted. They handled this all wrong. But I don't think it was malicious, Amanda. I think they're just emotionally immature and didn't know how to balance their needs with yours. As much as I wanted to stay angry, I had to acknowledge he might be right. My family wasn't deliberately cruel, just emotionally stunted. They had never learned healthy ways to communicate difficult feelings or navigate competing needs. And I had enabled this dysfunction by always being the accommodating one, never expressing my own disappointment or hurt. The next morning, I called my therapist, Dr. Patricia, whom I hadn't seen in over a year, and scheduled an emergency session. I spent an hour pouring out the whole story, from the birthday disappointment to the revelations about my family's secret struggles. What I'm hearing, Dr. Patricia said when I finally paused for breath, is that your family has cast you in a role that no longer fits, if it ever did. They see you as the strong, independent daughter who doesn't need support, which conveniently allows them to focus on other family members' more visible needs. Exactly.
But why?
I've never said I don't need support. But have you ever explicitly asked for it? Have you told them when you're struggling or when you need them to show up for you?
I thought about this.
I guess I've always tried to handle things on my own. I didn't want to add to their stress. And that's created a dynamic where they assume you're always fine unless you say otherwise. Most people aren't mind readers, Amanda. They take their cues from what we tell them and how we behave. By the end of our session, I had a clearer understanding of my role in enabling these family patterns. I hadn't created the problem, but I had participated in it by never clearly communicating my needs or setting appropriate boundaries. That night, Richard came over with takeout from my favorite restaurant. We talked for hours, really talked about communication and expectations. For the first time, I admitted how often I felt overlooked, not just by my family, but sometimes by him as well. I don't want to be the afterthought in my own life anymore, I told him. I need people who make me a priority, at least some of the time. I want to be that person, he said, taking my hand. I'm sorry I haven't been better at it so far. As I fell asleep that night, I felt a strange sense of calm. The hurt wasn't gone, but it had evolved into something more complex. I understood now that my family wasn't malicious, just emotionally immature. And while that didn't excuse their behavior, it gave me a framework for moving forward. Change would start with me setting clear boundaries and expressing my needs openly, something I had never really done before. In the days leading up to my family's return from Hawaii, I prepared myself for what needed to happen next. With Dr. Patricia's guidance, I developed a strategy for expressing my feelings without attacking them, for setting boundaries without burning bridges. The key, Dr. Patricia advised, is to use I statements. I felt hurt when rather than you hurt me when. It keeps the focus on your experience rather than their actions, which reduces defensiveness. I practiced these conversations out loud, sometimes with Richard, sometimes alone in front of my bathroom mirror. I needed to be clear and firm without letting emotion derail the message. When my mother texted that they had landed and would be home by evening, I took a deep breath and replied, "We need to have a family meeting tomorrow. My place, 2 p.m. It's important." Her response was immediate. "Is everything okay, sweetie?" "No," I wrote back, "but it will be after we talk." The next day, my family arrived laden with Hawaiian souvenirs, colorful shopping bags bursting with last-minute gifts. I accepted them with polite thanks, but didn't open any, placing them on the coffee table instead. "Can I get anyone coffee or tea before we start?" I asked, my voice calmer than I felt. They exchanged nervous glances as they settled onto my couch. My mother looked tan but tired, the lines around her eyes more pronounced than I remembered. My father kept clearing his throat, a nervous habit from childhood. Michael and Natalie sat unnaturally close together, united in apparent apprehension. "What's this about, Mandy?" my father finally asked. "Your mother's been worried sick since your text." I sat in the armchair across from them, hands folded in my lap to stop them from shaking. "I want to talk about what happened with my birthday," I began. "And more importantly, about our family dynamics that made it possible." "Oh, sweetheart, we feel just terrible about missing your birthday," my mother interrupted. "We have another celebration planned for next weekend to make up for it." "Mom, please let me finish," I said firmly. "This isn't about the celebration itself. It's about the fact that my entire family chose to be in another state during my 30th birthday without telling me until the day of. It's about the weeks of hints about something big that was never coming. It's about finding out from a note and social media posts that you were all together celebrating without me." "It wasn't like that," Michael protested. "Great Aunt Florence specifically requested those dates. We didn't have a choice." "You had a choice to be honest with me," I replied evenly. "You chose to let me believe you were planning something special for my birthday when you knew you wouldn't even be here." "We were going to tell you," Natalie said weakly. "We just couldn't figure out how without ruining the surprise for Florence. So, you prioritized her surprise over my feelings." The room fell silent. My family looked uncomfortable, but I pressed on. "I've spent a lot of time thinking about why this hurts so much, and I realized it's because it's part of a pattern. A pattern where my needs and feelings consistently come last in this family." I outlined specific examples, keeping my voice steady and factual. No one interrupted me this time. "The worst part," I continued, "is that I recently learned about Mom's health issues, Michael's job loss, and Natalie's marriage problems, all from Cousin Rachel. Not from any of you. You excluded me from your struggles just like you excluded me from your vacation." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We didn't want to worry you, Amanda. You have enough on your plate with your job and—" "That wasn't your decision to make, Mom," I said gently. "I'm an adult. I get to decide what I can handle. By keeping these things from me, you denied me the chance to support you, which is all I've ever wanted to do." My mother broke down then, years of stress and fear pouring out in heaving sobs. "I'm sorry," she gasped between tears. "I've been so scared about these tests, and I didn't know how to tell you. You've always been my rock, Amanda. I didn't want you to see me falling apart." I moved to sit beside her, taking her hand. "Mom, you're allowed to fall apart sometimes. We all are. But we need to fall apart together, not hide from each other when things get tough." This opened the floodgates. Michael admitted he'd been too ashamed to tell me about losing his job after I'd helped him financially in the past. Natalie confessed her marriage had been struggling for over a year, but she hadn't wanted to disappoint me by admitting she was failing at something. "I feel like I have to live up to your standards," she said. "You always seem to have everything figured out." "I don't," I assured her. "Not even close. But I've gotten good at pretending because I thought that's what everyone needed from me." For the first time in perhaps our entire adult lives, we were having an honest conversation about our feelings and fears. It was messy and uncomfortable and occasionally tearful, but it felt like breathing clean air after years in a smoky room. "I need things to change," I told them as our conversation wound down. "I need us to communicate openly, even when it's difficult. I need my feelings to be considered, not as an afterthought, but as a priority sometimes. And I need you all to stop seeing me as the invulnerable one who doesn't need support." To my surprise, they all agreed readily. Dad suggested family counseling sessions, something he had resisted for years. Mom promised to be honest about her medical situation going forward. Michael and Natalie committed to regular sibling dinners where we could check in with each other properly. Later, after they had gone, Richard came over. He had respectfully given us space for the family meeting but wanted to know how it had gone. "Better than I expected," I admitted. "There were tears and defensiveness at first, but we got to a good place eventually. They're all coming to family counseling." "I'm proud of you," he said, pulling me into a hug. "Standing up to your family couldn't have been easy." "It wasn't," I agreed. "But it was necessary. And not just for me, for all of us. We've been stuck in these dysfunctional patterns for so long, none of us knew how to break free. And now," I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. "Now, we start building something healthier. together. That night, as Richard and I made dinner in comfortable companionship, I realized that the birthday disaster had been painful but necessary. It had forced me to confront family dynamics that had been slowly suffocating me for years. I had forgiven my family, but I hadn't forgotten, and I wouldn't allow things to go back to the way they were before. The birthday that started with an empty house had somehow given me a fuller, more authentic relationship with the people I loved most. It wasn't the gift I had expected, but it might have been the one I needed most. 3 months after the birthday that wasn't, my family threw me what they called a re-birthday celebration. We gathered at my parents' house on a sunny Saturday afternoon, no secrets or surprises, just an honest acknowledgement of past mistakes and a commitment to doing better. The changes in our family dynamic were subtle but significant. When Mom received good news about her medical tests, she called me immediately instead of waiting until it wouldn't worry me. When Michael got a job interview, he asked me to help him prepare rather than pretending everything was fine on his own. When Natalie and Mark decided to renew their vows after working through their issues, she asked for my input on the ceremony rather than presenting me with a fait accompli. These small actions demonstrated a shift in how they saw me, no longer as the family member who didn't need consideration, but as someone whose feelings and input mattered. The most profound change, however, was in me. I had found my voice and discovered that using it didn't destroy relationships, it strengthened them. I had learned to set boundaries without guilt and to express needs without apology. "You seem different," my supervisor Catherine remarked after I successfully negotiated for the lead position on a major new account. "More confident." She was right. The confidence that had begun with standing up to my family had spilled over into other areas of my life. I had stopped accepting less than I deserved, both personally and professionally, and people had responded by offering more. Richard and I were stronger than ever. After witnessing my confrontation with my family, he had been inspired to address some issues with his own parents. We had become partners in growth, supporting each other through difficult conversations and celebrating small victories. "You know what Natalie told me yesterday?" I asked Richard as we strolled through the park one evening. "She said standing up to the family was the best thing I could have done for her marriage." "How so?" he asked. Apparently, seeing me set boundaries gave her permission to do the same with Mark. She said she'd been afraid of conflict for so long that she'd forgotten how to advocate for herself. Richard squeezed my hand. "You've always been the strong one, Amanda. The difference is now you're using that strength for yourself as well as for others." My sister's words had touched me deeply. What had begun as a personal stand for respect had rippled outward, affecting relationships I hadn't even considered. My parents were in counseling, working on communication issues that had plagued their marriage for decades. Michael had joined a support group for professionals in career transition, finally addressing the anxiety that had kept him isolated during his job search. As for me, I was learning to embrace the uncomfortable truth that love sometimes requires confrontation. That healthy relationships depend not just on what we give, but on what we're willing to demand. That setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. The birthday disappointment that had seemed so devastating had become, in retrospect, a catalyst for growth. Not just for me, but for my entire family system. We were all learning to be more honest, more direct, and ultimately more genuinely supportive of each other. Of course, we still had challenges. Old patterns occasionally resurfaced, especially in moments of stress. Mom still sometimes tried to shield me from difficult information. Dad still occasionally expected me to mediate family conflicts. But now, I had the tools and confidence to redirect these interactions toward healthier patterns. On my rebirthday, as we gathered around a proper homemade cake, my family's expressions were different than they had been on birthdays past. There was a new awareness in their eyes, a conscious presence that hadn't been there before. When they sang "Happy Birthday," it wasn't just a ritual but a genuine celebration of me and my place in their lives. As I blew out the candles, I didn't wish for anything material. I wished for the courage to continue this journey of authenticity, to keep writing my own story rather than accepting the role others had assigned me. "Before we end this celebration," I said, raising my glass, "I want to thank you all. Not just for this party, but for being willing to grow with me these past few months. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. To growth, my father said, raising his own glass. And to you, Amanda, for having the courage to demand better from all of us. As we clinked glasses, I caught Richard's eye across the table. He winked, and I felt a surge of gratitude for this new chapter in my life. A chapter where I was no longer a supporting character, but the protagonist of my own story.
So, what about you?
Have you ever felt overlooked or taken for granted by the people who should value you most? Have you found the courage to speak up and set boundaries? Or are you still playing a role that doesn't fit anymore? Share your experiences in the comments below, and let's continue this conversation. If my story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more content about navigating family dynamics and personal growth. And don't forget to hit that share button if you know someone who might need to hear this message today. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, it's never too late to rewrite your role in your own life story.